All right, guys. So, thank you guys for watching. My last video, I did a review of the show, and everyone has really been watching and commenting on the video. It's really gotten a lot of views. So, fortunately, I have Tatiana, who was one of the direct subjects of the last video I uploaded, and she reached out to me, and we've been talking. So, fortunately, I have her today, and we're gonna really talk about her life as a JW and her life after being a Jehovah's Witness. So, thank you so much, Tatiana, for agreeing to come talk to me. How's everything going with you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am amazing. It's good to actually talk to you. It's been a lot of back and forth, so it's good to actually get it
It's been a
started.
little crazy.
All right, so let's just jump right in. How did you become a Jehovah's Witness?
All right. So my husband was raised in because his mother is a Jehovah's Witness. She's the only one in the family that's still a Jehovah's Witness. His father was disfellowshipped many many years ago, about 2 decades ago now. So yeah, he was raised in, and he never really made the truth his own. So he's always had one foot in and one foot out. When we began dating, he was still shuttling that line, dating worldly women, and because he hadn't yet been baptized, so he didn't really qualify to date any of the women in any of the congregation. So he was determined he wanted to date. Couldn't do it in the congregation. Went outside the congregation, met me. We really hit it off. Um, and that story is a little funny because he was super secretive about it. He had moved in with me and my son, and things were going well, but he would get all dressed up and leave Sunday mornings and there Wednesday nights and tell me he just had a tell me he just had a meeting to go to, and he wouldn't tell me where it was, what it was about, who he was. I thought he was cheating on me. Uh, so I called
Wow,
his
really?
yes. So I
So
called his mother.
he didn't want to tell you that he was going to the Kingdom Hall.
No, he didn't want to tell me anything. So I called his mother, and his mother gave me the whole the whole religion from like A to Z, but it wasn't even an updated version. It was like from like the 80s or 90s type version.
The old light.
It was old light that she gave me. And so I just thought she was the craziest lady. And Robert, of course, being forced to be honest about what was really going on, he tried to give me new light information. And of course, I was like, okay, well, obviously, I have to just check it out. And he really encouraged me to just go check it out for myself. So I did what any good interested person these days would do, right? I went to jw.org and I filled out a request for a Bible study. And
So
right
wait a
away,
minute. You actually went to jw.org and filled out a
mm-hmm,
request for a Bible study? See, when I came in, there was no jw.org. So to
right.
hear somebody actually say, I went to jw.org before they even went into the organization, did you research some of the stuff that was on the site, or did you just immediately sign up for a study?
I just did what I was told to do by both of them. Because again, I was hearing this old light, this new, of course, I didn't know any of this terminology back then, but I was hearing one thing from him and another thing from her. And I was just like, I don't know any other Jehovah's Witnesses. So they both just said, go to the website and get a request and have a Bible study. So that was what I did. I did research, but that didn't come until after a few Bible studies. That's when I was like, okay, so it's Jehovah's Witnesses. Like then I had some things that I could go and research. Like before, it was just this nameless thing, this
Right.
nameless religion, kind of.
Hmm. So
So
how did you feel when you first were exposed to it? Was it something that you accepted immediately, or did it give you pause in the beginning to think, wait a minute, let me think about this. I'm not really sure yet, or did you just kind of jump in with both feet because your husband was already in?
I jumped in with both feet, but that's not to say that nothing gave me pause. I am very research oriented anyway, and so I did research things, but that came later, after a couple weeks of Bible study, about a month or so of Bible study. That's when I was like, started researching stuff. Um, and the one of the first things that I found was the UN and stuff like that. And so it was very confusing because all I had was the mother, my now mother-in-law, and Robert, and the little old lady that I was studying with. Bless her heart, she was such a sweetheart. Um, they all are, right?
Right.
So I just only had them, and they were all telling me, "Oh, that stuff you're looking up is apostate stuff," and they do what they. I got sucked into what everybody else, I'm assuming, gets sucked into, is that it's their word against nameless people on the internet's word, and you want to believe the people that you care about, and not only that, but they give you such reassurance, and they just string you along, I guess. Like, if you just keep studying, you'll see the truth for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big thing. Well, if you just
Mm-hmm.
keep studying, you'll figure it out if you just keep studying. So, I mean, even though I had doubts, and I had found things that caused suspicion, I was like, okay, well, I'll just keep studying, because that's what you think you're doing, is studying, right? You're learning something. I mean, now in hindsight, you can see that I was just being indoctrinated. There was no actual learning. There was no studying. It was just indoctrination. But that's hindsight for you.
Of course, and I think that there's a lot of things that they do that actually make it easy for people to come in, like with all the love bombing and making you feel so welcome, and especially with somebody that has come from a situation where they may not have had a lot of love like that. It is very it's very welcoming. It's almost like, even though I was always in it, I've seen how when somebody new comes in, everybody just swarms to that person. And it's a way to really make them feel like, man, this is something so different than what I'm used to. You can go to a church or whatever, and people will come up and greet you, but it's a little different with with the Jehovah's Witnesses.
They go to
They
extreme.
they go all out. They were like, come to my house for dinner. We're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. Like, it's just crazy. So it's a real easy way to get
That
somebody sucked in.
Yeah, and I mean, now I go to like this big, huge non-denominational church, so I can just be this faceless person. But
Hmm.
when you go to a Kingdom Hall, it's smaller and a lot more intimate. So I mean, you you're gonna see the same faces over and over and over again, and you really get to know people. They really get to know you because they get all up in your business, you know. So I
That's
mean,
a
it's
whole other
not.
conversation. So how did your family deal with you becoming a Jehovah's Witness? How was the interaction with you and your family?
um, when they realized that I was no longer going to be doing any holidays, they very quickly voiced their opinions on that. And it created a lot of rift because not everybody was respectful of it. Like I said, like my mother took like my mom asked if she could babysit my son, and I was like, okay, it's fine. And then she asked for him like this one, like span of a few days, and it just so happened to be that Halloween fell right on it. She dressed him up as a vampire and took him out trick or treating after I was like already like converting like hardcore like. So I felt really disrespected. So
I'm only laughing because my when I was growing up, my extended family, like my grandmother and my aunts and all of them, they didn't care that I was Jehovah's Witness. So when it was Christmas time, they would always tell my mom and dad, bring Keith over so we can give him his Christmas presents. They didn't care. And looking back, my family, my aunt now has said, that was probably not the right thing to do, but we just didn't care. We weren't trying to hear that Jehovah's Witness stuff. We wanted to give you Christmas presents. So it happens. It's real easy for your extended family to be like, we don't care about that Jehovah's Witness stuff. We're gonna do what we want to do. But it always causes an issue too,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yep.
then they get upset that you're
Mm-hmm.
not like you. You probably got upset that they weren't respecting your new beliefs and your new views. So how
Yeah.
did that come to did that resolve, or did you just that was something that continued to happen over the course of time as you being a Jehovah's Witness?
I just didn't allow for. I was like, well, if you can't respect it, then you can't take my kid anymore. Like, just so that created problems. And then, of course, my mom has a loud mouth anyway. So it just got all the other family members all riled up. And
Mm,
I just looked just like some crazy extremist. Like, I'm not celebrating anything. I'm not coming over for Christmas. Don't send me no Christmas presents. I look like a crazy extremist person. So I don't, I mean, in hindsight, I don't blame them. But
yeah,
yeah, it created a
yeah.
lot of problems.
I get it. It's the same thing with me. So in the beginning, do you think like how did you think your marriage was at the beginning? Was it great that you both were Jehovah's Witnesses, and was everything good because of that, or was there still any doubt in the back of your mind, or were you just all in and everything was just great?
So Robert proposed to me after about 9 months of being together. And ultimately, we ended up getting married about a year and a half into our relationship. So I had been studying that entire time.
Mm,
And almost from the beginning, I had started going to not only Sunday meetings, but weekday meetings. Like just introduction of the Bible Teach book, I'm already there at the weekday meetings. Like, so, I mean, I just got the full, all of it, all at once. And the crazy thing is, the very first book that I ever read, I read on my own. The very first JW publication I read on my own before I even started a Bible study.
mhm.
And I read the reasoning book from front to back. So I had some of that, even if it was old light basis, you know. Um, so I already had like all of that knowledge. So, I mean, yeah, it was just crazy. So, yeah, it did help that Robert and I both had that. I mean, anytime you have a couple that shares the same morals, the same values, the same faith, same culture, same lifestyle, same, all of that, things are going to be a lot smoother. I mean, you can, if if the Bible means the same amount of, means the same thing, to both the husband and wife, a scripture is real quick to squash an argument because that's divisive. It's right down the middle. It's neutral, But yeah, so that's definitely not something we have anymore.
Do you feel like I know you said everything was with the Bible coming in, it was neutral, it was a decisive end to an argument. Do you still do you feel that it was neutral to you as the woman in the marriage, or do you think it was very leaned toward the males in the relationship?
It's always leaned toward the males, but that's not to say that there's not a couple scriptures in there that could be used. we all know we all know the scriptures. I'm not going to quote the Bible right now, but I mean we all know the scriptures that talk about the woman's place, and not so much of demeaning, but she's that fragile vessel. She needs to be treated with respect and all. So I mean, it's just there's a few rebuttals you can use.
Gotcha, definitely. So how long were you in the Jehovah's Witness organization?
Little over 8 years.
Eight
Little over
years.
8 years. Mm-hmm.
So when you started to think differently, how did that start, and how did it affect your marriage?
Um, it was like an overnight thing with me almost. It was really quick. Like I had a question about um I had a question about some medical. I have a medical background, so I had a question about something medically and the organization's stance on it. And the new light is very different than the old light. So I had gone about researching this really, really, really old light. And once you start, it's quickly a rabbit hole. Once you start seeing how things were back in the 40s, 50s, things like that, old light like that, very quickly it sucks you in, like the ludicrousness of it. Like,
Well,
so then
and
it start
you're
makes you
right.
question the new light.
Well,
So
the thing is too with that is what do you say to the people who were subscribed to the old light? You know what I mean? There's so many stories if you look at it on YouTube of people who literally let their loved ones die or they themselves died because of the things in the old publications about blood transfusion and things like that. Not even back then they were saying you couldn't take any parts of blood, not even the portions or any of that. So yeah, what do you say to people who have lost their loved ones because they believed that old light, and then a few years later, could you imagine being somebody that was like let somebody die, and then a few years later say, okay, it's okay for me to take blood portions now, and you thinking, wow, I just let my mother die for no reason, and it's horrible.
I cannot imagine. I really can't. The, I would be at a loss for words. That I don't think that there's any words that anybody could say to express their sympathies. I mean, their anger. There's just not. There's no words for that when that happens to somebody.
Right.
And I can't put myself in that because I just can't imagine.
So is this something like that you say you had a medical background? Was it something along those lines that started your questioning of the religion?
No, that wasn't it exactly. Um, what it was exactly is not neither here nor there. It's a very controversial topic, and I'll leave it at
Gotcha.
that.
Gotcha.
But no, it was something medically, but it wasn't the blood issue. But that certainly did the topics that I was researching did lead me to the blood issue among many many other old light, new light, and like I said, it's just a rabbit hole. Once you start looking at the old light, comparing it to the new light, seeing the changes and the flip flopping,
Mm-hmm.
then I mean, there's really no denying like something's up. This ain't right,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So
So that so when that started happening, did did you immediately tell your husband or did you just keep it to yourself for a while?
I kept it to myself for about a week, maybe 2 weeks. It wasn't very long that I kept it to myself because I mean, I would spend hours and hours for like that entire 2 week period just studying and researching.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you amass so much knowledge and you're bursting. And I'm still going to the meetings and now I'm like walking out because I can't even. I would go and sit outside by myself in the parking lot, like, because I couldn't even sit there through the meetings. So it wasn't something that I could hide because immediately it was just triggering.
Yeah. I actually do the same thing. It's like I would take a lot of bathroom breaks. Everybody would go to the bathroom through the song. I would go to the bathroom all the time, and then eventually it just got to a point where I just couldn't go. So, it,
Mm-hmm.
and your situation and my situation are very similar because when we were corresponding, you were saying that you were unbaptized as well,
Mm-hmm.
and I was unbaptized also. And I think one thing that people don't understand is that you don't necessarily have to be baptized in order to get the negative benefits of associating with Jehovah's
Mm-mm.
Witnesses because I was in for so long that
Yep.
even now, just a few days ago, I saw one of the brothers from the congregation at Kroger, and he saw me and looked right at me and wouldn't speak to me because he knows I'm no longer trying to be that. And my parents, as I said in my last video, my parents don't speak to me either. So you don't necessarily have to be a baptized Jehovah's Witness. You will just be shunned regardless.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So when you And another thing we have in common is that I was married at the time of me leaving as well. So I remember the conversation I had to have with my wife when I told her I'm
You
no
don't have to
longer
tell
going to
us
be
about that.
going.
You're not getting out of that.
Well, I actually said I actually talked about it in my video. I had a dream the night before, and after I had that dream, the next day I went to her and I said, "Look, I no longer want to be a Jehovah's Witness. I don't want to go to the meetings. I don't want to study with them." I said, "But I'm not going to, get in your way of your whatever your beliefs are, because if I felt like if I was to do that, then I would be doing the exact same thing that I hated the Jehovah's Witnesses for. I didn't want to deprive somebody of what they believed or force my beliefs onto her the same way I thought that the witnesses were. But it wasn't. It was a very amicable conversation. I was surprised because after I said what I had to say, she just said okay, and I think she just said okay because in her mind she had already made it up that it didn't matter what you thought. I'm gonna be a Jehovah's Witness, so you can do whatever, and I'm gonna be okay. So that was the end of that conversation. But how did it go for you?
Um, it was little comments that I made here and there, and he just had a rebuttal for everything. I mean, you've seen it. Um, it went pretty much just like what you saw.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, just not a whole lot of thought, just the scripted answers for everything. Or the I don't know, I'll look into it, research it, and then of course there's no follow up conversation.
Mhm.
Um,
How did you feel after you had that conversation? And one thing that you said, and I mentioned it in my video, the having a mate that's Jehovah's Witness and one that isn't, and the mate that is basically praying for your destruction. I never thought of that, and that was a very, very deep observation on your part. That has to be. And looking back, I remember having the same conversation with my wife at the time, and they always would say things like, I don't want you to be destroyed, but you're going to be destroyed if you're going to. That is a very painful thing for someone to have to sit and listen to. So when you had that conversation, how did you deal with all of that?
I wasn't even, that wasn't a conversation that we had. And I really, for me, it was because we have the two young kids.
Hmm.
And to me, that was just, if I can't sit through this, I certainly don't want them sitting through this. Like, and I had to think about it from their perspective and growing up, so that wasn't even, if it was just me, I could probably deal with it a lot easier. But the biggest conflict that Robert and I are dealing with right now is the kids, and how we're going to make this work. Um, because he still very much wants um, it, both the kids indoctrinated.
Hmm.
And I obviously do not. Um, and I'm offering the kids an alternative, which makes things really easy for the kids to make a decision.
Hmm.
Um, that, like I said, I go to a mega church now, and the church that I'm going to, um, people can dance in the aisles if they want to, which my daughter has tried to do many, many times at the Kingdom Hall, and I'm sure you can imagine how that goes. Even though she's like 5 years old and she's got on like this long, pink little frilly dress, and she wants to spin and twirl, and they're not having it.
That's not going.
No, no,
Yeah.
no, no. I got many talks from the elders about how she needs to stay in her seat or in the aisle. But anyway,
Mhm.
um, so I mean, the church that we go to now, the kids can sing, they can dance, they can color, they can bring their toys, they can wear what they want. I mean, they're comfortable, they're having fun with other kids. And so if both of our churches are at the same time, you know, same day, same time, and the kids have to pick, okay, well, where do you want to go? They don't want to go to the Kingdom Hall. Not that I don't, I mean, I certainly don't blame them. What kid really wanted to go? But, like, so
So
that
they
when they
have.
keep,
Do they actually? Do you guys actually have to conversation with them, and they have to figure out which one they want to go to? I mean,
every week, and when they consistently pick mommy's church over daddy's church, Robert is getting really furious. And I mean, he keeps piling on. Really, the only two things the Jehovah's Witnesses have, which is the fear and the guilt,
Mm,
um, which is really hurtful. It's hurtful for them. It's hurtful for me to watch.
hmm. So how
So,
do you deal with trying to figure out which, which kids, or how you're gonna free your kids from the indoctrination of the organization?
well, that's not my job to unindoctrinate them. I have released myself from that. The best thing that I can do is to teach them here at home, bring them, offer them another alternative, which is a grace filled church. Um, when there's no works involved, it's just grace. You know, so and it's fun for them. So I mean, they it's not like if you don't go to church, then you have to stay home. They have an they the That's the best that I can do, is continue to read the Bible to them, pray with them, teach them, you know, the gospel as I see it, and then offer them an alternative. That's the best that I can do, you
Does
know.
uh, does your husband still teach them things from the JW organization?
Mm-hmm.
How do they respond to it now that they've been
I,
exposed to other things? Do they
I
enjoy listening, or do they just kind of blow it off? Or
They enjoy spending time with their dad.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, they enjoy spending time with their dad. Um, and I I think they're very confused. I think they're
And of
confused.
course they are. I think any child in that situation, and even growing up as a Jehovah's Witness, you're confused as well because you go out into the world and you see what other people are dealing with and what other people are doing. So that makes you confused too because as a child, you don't necessarily understand why you can't do what you can't do. You just know your mom and dad tells you can't do it. Since you've left the organization, how has life been for you personally? How do you feel personally with not even thinking about your husband and your kids and all that other stuff, just you personally? How do you feel now that you've left the organization?
That's a loaded question. Um, with having all the authorities involved, it um, it's been hard. Um,
Hmm.
and like I said, I found grace, and that's been amazing. I was baptized at my new church.
Hmm.
That was a wonderful day for me. Um, I'm loving this new church family that I have. Um, Real friends.
I was
So
gonna
that's
ask you that. Did you think that you had any real friends? Because one thing I think people don't understand is, as a Jehovah's Witness, is that you're always surrounded by people and you're never alone, but you can still be very, very lonely because a lot of times those people don't seem very genuine. So do you think you had real friends when you were in the organization?
I felt like that image of like the stick of the carrot dangling on the stick in front of the horse.
Hmm.
Like I felt like that's what I always was. Like I was always working harder to be baptized so that I could have those friends. Like I always felt like, these are the friends that are waiting for you if you just got baptized.
That is
Like I
a
was in.
very good trick that they do, and a lot of people don't understand that. I was having that conversation a few days ago with my daughter's mom, and I was telling her, I said, the organization has a way of creating an atmosphere that makes you think you have to get baptized in order to receive the benefits of being a Jehovah's Witness, whether they say it or not. It's kind of an implied thing where once you get baptized, you're going to receive all these amazing benefits. And so the friend thing is a lot because I felt like if I didn't get baptized, I wouldn't have real friends until then. So that
It
is a
wasn't
very
just implied in my case. My study teacher actually told me, like, well, because I would mention a few times, hey, I really wish that I had, you know more, you know, more get-togethers. More, I mean, because I was being involved and I was invited to get to the get-togethers and the JW
The
parties and stuff like that.
gatherings.
The gatherings. I was always invited, but there was no one-on-one. There was no personal connection. There was no, hey, why don't you come over for coffee? There was no one-on-one personal connection like that. I mean, I was invited to the group, but I wasn't. There was no personal connections,
Hmm.
and so that was always tough for me. And like I said, with my study teacher, I would make those comments to her, and she said, "Well, it's because you're baptized. It's not because you're not baptized. If you were baptized, then people would be more willing to reach out to you and do things with you, or you know, um,
Did you pursue
you need to
baptism?
get more." I'm so yes, I did
And
for years.
what stopped? Because I did too, but there were a lot of things that stopped me from being able to get baptized. What, like they would tell me I didn't have enough time. Like my time was always a problem. Like I would have like 8 hours or 9 hours, and everything. Well, you need to have at least 10 every month. Um, my meeting attendance. They were like, you don't make all the meetings. But I was like, well, at that time, my parents weren't Jehovah's Witnesses, so I would have to walk to the Kingdom Hall when I try to go. But they didn't understand that, so they're like, no, you still can't get baptized. So what were some of the things? And actually, looking back, I'm glad I wasn't. But
I
what were
feel like it
some of
wouldn't
the
have made a
things that
difference at this point. I feel
it
like
really
literally
wouldn't?
it would not have made it because I'm still treated exactly the same. I still would have came to the same conclusion that I'm at now, and I'm
That
still
is a good
treated the
point.
exact same. So like to me, it literally, it would if I was baptized, it wouldn't have made any difference.
What was some of the things that kept you from being able to be baptized?
Um, well, I think that depends on who you ask. If you ask my husband, he might give you a very different answer. um,
Oh man.
um, but I mean, towards the end of it, I don't. I was an unbaptized publisher, so I mean, I had finished the God's Love book. I had finished I'm sorry, the Bible Teach book, then the God's Love book. We finished the Family Happiness book together. So I mean, I had done all the books and I had met all the qualifications that are listed there in the organized book.
Hmm.
Um, so exactly what was holding me back? It was probably my inability to be consistent with the field service time. I mean, I would get 20 hours one month and 3 hours the next month, and my
Yeah, I
meeting
just made it
attendance
going
was
field service.
fine.
I just didn't like
And
it.
I I looked forward to it because of fellowship. It gave me a chance to be with somebody to try and attempt to make that one-on-one connection with
Hmm.
the other women. You know, um, so for that, and I don't mind. I didn't mind knocking on the door, and I'm a really outspoken person on a lot of very. I bet you never would have got that right on a wide range of many controversial topics.
Hmm.
So for me to go and knock on a door and tell somebody, "Hey, I believe this, and you should believe it too," I didn't have a problem with that. So I had a bigger problem when it was cold,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
but
Definitely.
I'd
Definitely.
have a bigger problem with the cold weather than I would knocking on a stranger's door and telling them what they should believe.
Yeah. So
Ironically,
after after you left the congregation, what has been the involvement of the elders and the people who are around you at that time? What have they how have they treated you since everything is kind of blown up?
like I'm dead.
Yeah.
Yep. They don't. Nobody says hi. I mean, so I didn't fade. I wrote an 8-page disassociation letter, and at that point in time, my husband was concerned about my spirituality, so he called the elder to have a shepherding call with me.
Hmm.
And I guess this is where it differs because I wasn't baptized, so there was no judicial committee formed. Um, Not that it would have made a difference, because instead of having three men, I had in a little back room, I had an elder and I had the CO. I had the CO in my living room at my dining room table.
You have the circuit overseer
I
at
had the
your
circuit
house.
overseer at my house at my dining room table. And here I am, and I am in reading my 8-page disassociation letter to them. Okay.
Wow.
And actually, my husband was there, so it was three men altogether anyway. So I'm reading my 8-page disassociation letter with them, and I'll give them that for the first 5 pages. They were really polite and let me read my disassociation letter, um, which I'll send to you.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so they,
Before you finish, let me ask you this. What made you choose to go ahead and disassociate as opposed to fading away?
fading away wasn't going to be an option for me. Um, my husband wasn't going to just let me say, I don't want to go to the meeting today. I don't feel well. He would ask a lot of questions and probably he would make me feel really guilty about missing the meetings and not making a good example for the children. So, and I didn't want to put my husband in the position to continuously lie for me. Not that I think that he would. Maybe he would. I don't know. But I didn't want to put him in that position.
Hmm.
So, fading just wasn't an option for me.
Gotcha.
So I knew that I was going to have to be decisive about it.
Okay.
But if I was going to go out, I wanted everybody to know why I was going out.
So
So,
you
like I
wrote your
said,
letter and you were on page 5
I was
and
on page
something
five,
happened.
and the CEO said, "Okay, that's enough. We don't want to hear anymore."
What?
And I was like, "Okay, but I wrote this for you." And in my mind, I didn't say it out loud, but in my mind, I actually wrote the disassociation letter for my husband. I had asked my husband, and he said that he would be there to during the shepherding call for me. So he was there, and I wrote the disassociation letter for him. It was filled with facts and questions and history, all the relevant things that a XJW thinks of, the reasons why they would leave. And I wrote it for him, hoping that if, he heard these things and heard the rebuttals, that maybe he would be more inclined to do his own research, come to some other conclusions, just something. Um, but my husband sat there pretty much quiet the entire time. I bet y'all can't guess what that looks like. um,
How does that make you feel? Do you
um,
feel and I
oh,
know
I'm
you
gonna get.
understand. Okay, go ahead.
Let me
Sorry.
let me finish.
All
Okay, so
right.
I
All
get to
right.
page 5, and the CEO is like, "Okay, that's it. We've heard enough." And I look at him and I go, "But I wrote this for you. You're sitting in my house, so I'm gonna finish reading it." And my husband looked at me like, "You are so disrespectful."
Wow.
Yeah, he
Instead of
just
looking
gave
at
me
them
this
like they in
utter
your
look
house.
of just disgust, and it's like, no. And I was like, I'm gonna finish reading it.
Hmm.
And they threatened me, well, if you finish reading it, we're gonna get up and leave. And I said, no, you're in my house. I wrote this for you. Please sit down and finish listening to what I have to say. And they
Okay.
got up and they were like, no, we're not listening to it. We don't want to hear it. And I said, okay, fine. Let's have a discussion then.
Okay. So how did the discussion go at that point? Did they stay and discuss with you?
They didn't want to discuss. They said that we don't discuss the doctrinal matters, that we're not going to discuss those with you. And I said, well, that's pretty much everything that I brought up then. They told me that Satan had a real good grasp on me, and that they asked me, do you want to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore? And I said, no.
Hmm. So we had to cut our conversation a little short. We both had errands we needed to run, and so we had to cut it a little bit short. But Tatiana has agreed to come back to the channel later this week and finish our conversation. So once we get that done, I'll post part 2 of our conversation. And again, if you like this video, please like, share, and hit the bell so you will see when I upload more content. But again, I want to say thanks to Tatiana for coming onto the channel, and thanks for everyone in your support of this video and the last video I did about um, Tatiana's episode. And the reaction has been really great. Also, the episode I did about why I left the JWs, um, a lot of comments, a lot of great comments, supportive comments. And guys, just really remember that the point of all of us who are XJWs, the point that we are doing this, the reason why we're doing this is to help people. So please, if you don't have anything encouraging to say in the comment section, I'm going to remove it. But please don't post anything if you don't have anything constructive to say, because again, the point of this is not to judge anybody. The point is for all of us who are going through what XJWs go through. The point is for us all to come together and help each other through this hard time, because it is very difficult for people to leave the JWs, and it's even more difficult once you leave to get your life together. So please be positive and say things to encourage each other. We're not trying to talk down anybody in this video or in the comment section. All right. So again, thank you guys for your support. I really appreciate it, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right. Peace.